Improving. Proud. People.
Crime. Transport. Housing.
Responsibility. Challenge. Policy.
Listening. Engaging. Helping.
Service. Collaboration. Privilege.
To help with the cost of living crisis, we're funding free school meals for another year. Yay! That means that children in every state primary school will receive a free school meal this year and next year. Thanks to everyone who's made that happen.
Advocacy. Scrutiny. Challenge.
Community. Representative. Local.
Inspiring. Collaborative. Hopeful.
Adventurous. Diligent. Improving.
Being a nuisance.
Here are 5 ways we're making London greener in 30 seconds. The Beaver is back. We're reintroducing wildlife to London to help nature thrive. We've planted over 500,000 trees since 2016. Our buses are getting greener. We now have over 1,000 zero-emission buses. We're pushing water companies to clean up our rivers and stop sewage from flowing into the Thames. We've helped cut air pollution by nearly a half in central London and are working on making sure every family can breathe cleaner air. Together, we're making London greener for everyone.
Challenging. Persuasive. Inclusive.
Purposeful. Power. People.
Campaigning. Advocacy. Liberal.
Lucid. Needed. Evolving.
Best. Job. Ever.
Have you heard about the Superloop? It's the brand new bus route circling outer London, making journeys quicker and more convenient for everyone. A commitment made by the Mayor of London. Search Superloop to find your nearest stop.
Improvements. Questions. Actions.
Scrutiny. Opportunity. Equality.
Concerned. Caring. Tenacious.
Accountability. Integrity. Generosity.
Exciting. Fascinating. Humbling.
A decade of austerity has denied young Londoners the chances they need to succeed. The problem is poverty and crime happens when people are starved of opportunities. That's why we can't arrest ourselves out of crime. We've got to create opportunities for young people to feel part of their community. In other words, you don't cut services, you fund them. We're investing an additional £5 million so people in every corner of our city have opportunities. After all, that's what we all want for our kids.
Engagement. Curiosity. Scrutiny.
Service. Action. Results.
Listening. Learning. Leading. Strategic. Championing.
Welcome to People's Question Time online. If you wish to tweet about the event tonight, the hashtag is #PQT. We have 5 core topic areas and will spend up to 18 minutes on each. Other questions relating to the Mayor and Assembly's remit outside of these core topics can be asked in the final section. This is how it works. For each topic, the Chair will take several questions within the time provided. There will be a mix of live video questions taken from members of the public who submitted their question whilst registering for the event, and the most liked questions posted by registered audience members from our live chat forum. The Chair will direct these to the Mayor and Assembly members. To make sure we get through as many questions as possible and cover a range of issues, duplicated questions will not be asked. Keep your questions short and on topic, and refrain from abusive or defamatory remarks. These will not be posted. With so many of you online, we will not be able to ask everyone's question. After the event, registered audience members will receive a feedback form with details of how to submit questions to the Mayor and London Assembly. We will finish tonight at 9 p.m. sharp. The event is being broadcast live and recorded. For those with hearing impairments, there will be live subtitles throughout the event, as well as a British Sign Language interpreter who should be visible to you in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. For anyone wishing to have a transcript of the meeting, this will be available on request after the event. Good evening, and welcome to the 48th People's Question Time. This is the 16th People's Question Time for the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. The Mayor and the London Assembly work to improve life for Londoners and make London a better place. And tonight is your chance to voice your concerns and ask the Mayor and Assembly members what we are doing for the capital and its people. I'm Nick Rogers, the Assembly member for Hounslow, Richmond and Kingston. It is an honour to chair the last People's Question Time of this mayoral term and to give you as Londoners the opportunity to hold us elected representatives to account. Now, can I welcome our London Assembly members who are joining us virtually tonight? And finally, please welcome the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. Before we begin with your questions, we will now have a few introductory words from the Chair of the London Assembly and then the Mayor. So I now invite the Chair of the London Assembly, Andrew Boff AM, to give his opening address.
Thank you. The London Assembly is the voice of London, composed of 25 members elected at the same time as the Mayor in order to hold him to account and to scrutinise his policies. On behalf of the Assembly, I'd like to start by saying thank you to everyone who's joining us online this evening. The London Assembly costs each Londoner under £1 a year to scrutinise the Mayor's budget of over £20.5 billion. And just last week, the Assembly held the final session in its scrutiny process of the Mayor's budget. We must ensure that money is well spent by the Mayor and that his plans deliver for Londoners. Our scrutiny work covers 10 committee areas, and I'd like to take a brief moment to talk to you about some of the highlights of our scrutiny work this year. Following its investigation into childcare, the Economy Committee recently released a report looking into the challenges around childcare with recommendations to the Mayor and Government on how to improve the system for providers and children alike. To coincide with Eating Disorders Awareness Week, today the Health Committee published a report into eating disorders in London, making recommendations to the Mayor and the GLA on how they could intervene and influence services so that those people experiencing eating disorders can get the care and the treatment they need. Tackling climate change remains front and centre of the Assembly's scrutiny work. Recently, the Planning and Regeneration Committee published a report on the role of the built environment in addressing the issue. The Transport Committee recently wrote to the Mayor with recommendations on how to improve transport in outer London, enabling Londoners not just to travel for work and caring responsibilities, but to get to and from the places they love. The committee also wrote to the Mayor with recommendations to improve transport services in London. The Police and Crime Committee has continued its scrutiny of the Metropolitan Police Service 1 year on from the Baroness Casey review. This week, the committee outlined in a letter to the Mayor the steps the Met could take to further strengthen its approach to money laundering in the capital. This year, the Housing Committee held an investigation into young Londoners' access to home ownership, where it heard from over 400 young people in responses to its survey on the issue. The committee will be publishing a report with recommendations to the Mayor, the GLA, and local authorities around potential solutions to this problem in the coming weeks. Recently, the Assembly has been concerned about what we see as failures in the Mayor's accountability and openness, both to the Assembly and the public. I recently wrote to the Mayor to express my concern at the Mayor's lack of openness when answering questions from Assembly members during the important budget process. His evasiveness appears to have been driven by the needs of media deadlines. This lack of openness and accountability has manifested itself in tonight's arrangements for the People's Question Time, which have been put into place against the advice of the London Assembly. The Mayor should be expected to have the opportunity to look Londoners in the eye when he is governing on their behalf. You can keep up with our work on the Assembly by following us on Twitter, I've got to call it X now apparently, at London Assembly, and watching our meetings in person at City Hall, on the London Assembly website, or on YouTube. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Assembly Member Boff. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, will now give his opening address. Mr. Mayor.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to People's Question Time. At the outset tonight, I'd like to add that now, more than ever, we have a responsibility as elected representatives to set an example, to choose our words carefully, to calm, not inflame, and to unite, not divide. After all, we may have a difference of opinion. We have a common duty to promote civility, notwithstanding that, to promote sensitivity and mutual respect in our politics, and to bring our communities together rather than drive them apart. London is the greatest city in the world, not least because of our incredible diversity. And I'll forever be grateful to this city and to my fellow Londoners for giving me the opportunity to go from a council estate to being your mayor. It truly has been the honour of a lifetime. And I spent every day over the last 8 years working tirelessly to repay your faith and to give back to the city that's given so much to my family and myself. Our city's been through a lot. Brexit, this government's austerity, the pandemic, and now a terrible cost of living crisis, which continues to weigh heavily on our communities. That's why from City Hall, we're taking action right now to help ease some of the financial pressures on Londoners. We're providing free school meals for all primary school pupils this year and next, saving families up to £1,000 per child. We're freezing all TfL fares once again to make commuting more affordable for millions of Londoners. And we're building record numbers of council homes. I'm also extremely proud of everything else City Hall has delivered and is continuing to deliver. Greener, more convenient public transport, cleaner air for millions of Londoners, the Elizabeth line, massive investment to help homeless Londoners off our streets, free skills training for anyone who's unemployed or in low-paid work, a 40% increase in the London living wage since I became mayor, 330,000 new jobs created through City Hall initiatives, huge investment in the police and positive opportunities for young Londoners as part of an approach that's been tough on crime and tough on the causes of crime, and reform of the Met Police Service, helping to drive out the appalling racism, sexism, and homophobia we've seen. Today, as the Angeloni report is published, we remember in our thoughts and prayers Sarah Everard, who tragically was murdered almost 3 years ago this weekend. All the while, we've continued to loudly and proudly stand up for our city's values of equality, inclusion, and respect for diversity. And that includes always calling out racism and prejudice, whether it's anti-Semitism or Islamophobia, regardless of what form it takes. We should be proud of the big steps forward we've taken as a city, but there's clearly still so much more to do. So my promise to you tonight is that I'll continue working flat out to build a better, fairer, greener, safer, more prosperous and more affordable London, a city where no one is left behind and where everyone can fulfill their potential and feel welcome, respected and valued. Thank you. I look forward to answering your questions during the course of this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we will now begin taking questions in the following order: transport, policing and safety, air quality and the environment, housing, London's economic recovery, and then anything else not already covered. For each topic, we will take one live question, followed by questions from the live chat, which is available to those of you who have pre-registered. But please note, the chat is for questions only. Comments will not be published. Questions for each topic will be published at the start of the relevant section. Please remember to keep your questions short, and I'll also be asking the Mayor and Assembly members to keep their answers short and to the point so that we can fit in as many questions as possible. Most importantly, you can like other people's questions, and those that have the most likes will be asked first, assuming that they are on topic and have not already been asked. So it's now time to hear from you. Please do start submitting your questions in the chat. Our first topic tonight is transport, so please start to add and like questions on this topic now. And welcome to Gemma Graham from the London Borough of Bromley, who will ask our first question. Gemma.
Hello, thank you. I would like to ask Sadiq Khan, with the introduction of the ultra low emission zone in outer London since August having an impact on the public's financial and social freedoms, what is your plan going forward if you are to be re-elected as London Mayor in May? There's been a lot of talk of paper mile coming. Is this something that is in the pipeline, please?
Thank you very much, Gemma. Thanks for getting us started tonight. Over to you first, Mr. Mayor, then we'll go to Assembly members.
Thank you very much, Gemma. It's lovely that the first calls from outer London, really important priority for City Hall. So look, the decision to expand the ULEZ to outer London was a difficult one for me to take, but I think the right one. None of us would put up with dirty water, so why dirty air? And we know the difference the ULEZ has made to central and inner London. It's reduced toxicity, air pollution in central and inner London, and we know that no level of exposure to air pollution is safe. The good news is now 19 out of 20 cars seen driving in outer London, that's 95% are compliant. So don't pay a penny, but see the benefits of cleaner air. At the same time, we're improving public transport in outer London. So the short answer to your question is there are no plans. I do not intend to. I will not introduce paper mile in outer London or any other part of London. There are other things we are going to do, though, to carry on making progress in relation to cleaner air and to reach net zero carbon as soon as we can by 2030. We're going to carry on having more electric buses. We, at the moment, have more electric buses, zero emission buses, than any city in Western Europe. At more than 1,300. We're going to carry on accelerating the progress of electric buses. The Superloop is fantastic. The plan is for 9 out of the 10 to be rolled out over the next couple of months by spring. The final one will open when the Silvertown Tunnel opens. We'll be introducing more buses in outer London. The plan is for an additional 4 million kilometres of more bus kilometres in outer London. We'll invest more in that. We're also going to invest in public transport. We have the Elizabeth line now serving outer London. We've got the extension of the Barking Riverside. We've got Northern Line extension going to parts of Wandsworth. We want more investment. So you'll be seeing me lobbying for the Bakerloo line, lobbying for the DLR and London Overground, but also lobbying, more importantly, for more investment in public transport in outer London.
For the motorists, because some of us can't, my partner's a tree surgeon, he can't take his tools on public transport and it's costing him every day to go to work to earn the family money. What's going to happen to people that can't use this public transport?
Yeah, great question, Gemma. So what I did in my budget just a couple of weeks ago, which was opposed, I'm afraid, the Conservatives voted against it, is I put another £50 million into the scrappage scheme. So we now have £210 million in that scrappage scheme. Every single Londoner who has a car is eligible to apply to the scrappage scheme. If you've got a van, if you are somebody who works in a charity, you've got a minibus, you're able to apply for the additional money we've got in the scrappage scheme. It's now £210 million. I'd encourage your partner, your husband, to, if he's still driving a vehicle that's non-compliant, and the £12.50 is obviously an expense to him, apply to the scrappage scheme. There's still a lot of money left in there, so you can make the transition to get a vehicle that's compliant, so you don't pay a penny more. The good news, as I said, is 19 out of 20 vehicles now seen driving in outer London on an average day. 19 out of 20 are compliant.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. We have an indication from Assembly Member Fortune.
Thank you, Chair. It's a couple of things I want to pick up on there. The online format here means that none of these questions are a surprise. All these questions were sent in 2 weeks in advance, and these questions have been structured. So that's part of the nature of driving it online. Another thing I want to pick up on there is where the Mayor said that the Conservatives opposed the Mayor's budget. We did indeed, because that budget contained the continuation of the expanded ULEZ zone, which is hurting businesses like your partners, Gemma. It's worth noting that the Conservative amendment put forward £200 million extra to help with policing, which would have a huge impact on some of the trouble that outer London's having. and the Labour Party opposed that. But enough of that. The interesting thing there is about air quality. There's an independent assessment which looks at air quality and the impact that an expanded Outer London ULEZ will have. And that independent impact assessment states very, very clearly that there will be limited to no improvement in air quality. So the expansion of that ULEZ zone is doing exactly what Gemma highlighted there. It's not cleaning up the air, but it is hitting small businesses, it is hitting families, it is hitting charities, it is stopping them going around their business, about their business. This expanded ULEZ zone starts to stop creating revenue in a couple of years. Why? Because businesses will go out of business, there'll be a natural attrition rate of vehicles, etc. That's why there's a project going on at the moment to bring in-house all the different congestion charging models, the congestion zone, the lower emission zone, the ULEZ zone. Part of that remit, when it was first set up, was to create a structure that could, at some point in the future, have distance user charging models. It was part of the remit when the project was set up. The Mayor says that he won't introduce this. I would refer you to a question that my colleague Keith Prince asked the Mayor early in 2021, where he asked him explicitly, do you intend to expand the ULEZ zone to Outer London? And the Mayor's very clear answer was no, I do not intend to. That is not my intention, that's not what I'm going to do. Essentially what he just said about the paper mile road user charging method that he's going to bring in. It's clear. There's no impact, there's no positive impact on air quality with the expansion to Outer London. It's a huge revenue cash cow. And when that runs out, because people have gone out of business, the only and logical process that will come in there is what the thing was set up for in the first place, which is a distance user charging model.
Thank you, Assembly Member Fortune. I've seen no other indications from Assembly members on this question, so we'll move to questions taken directly from the live chat. I'll read out 3 questions before I invite the Mayor and Assembly members to answer. So the 3 questions we have, the first one is from Ritika, which is, how are you encouraging Londoners to come back into town? The second one from Robert, how are you improving public transport for people in Outer London? And the third from David, the SL9 has transformed my commute, but will there be more? So I'll hand over first to the Mayor and then to Assembly members. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Nick, for those 3 questions. So in relation to the first question, I mean, this is a challenge, Ritika, that everybody faces around the world, global cities, how we get people back into the centre of our city, because there's 3 things we did really well at home during the pandemic: working from home, shopping from home, and leisure from home. So my challenge to businesses that employ people in the office, those who are in charge of leisure and retailers, we've got to make the experience better to encourage people back into our city to experience those things, work in the office, shopping and leisure. The great news is we've seen that some of the campaigns we've had from City Hall, Let's Do London, have been really successful. And so if you come into London, you will see our city is buzzing and fizzing. On public transport, weekends, public transport use is more than 100% on most days, which means people are back for leisure and tourism. Monday to Thursday, the average, and so it fluctuates during the day, is north of 85% people are back. Friday's a bit slower, it's about 73%. So what I have announced is TfL to look into whether we can trial for 3 months off-peak Fridays, so we can encourage people back to our city on Fridays, whether it's work in the office, whether it's leisure, whether it's tourism, and hope to make an announcement soon in relation to whether we can do Let's Do Friday with the off-peak Friday scheme. The whole world is watching if we can get this off the ground, because the whole world, in terms of global cities, is grappling with not just what happens on a Friday, Thursday's the new Friday, how we get people back into our city. It's really important for the vibrancy of our city and the joys of London. It's not just Outer London, Inner London, but it's also central as well. We're all one big ecosystem. It's really important to get people back in town centres across London, but also the centre of our city as well. The second question is in relation to further improvements in Outer London. And we are investing huge amounts in relation to Outer London's transport in particular, which is what this part of the meeting is about. Some examples of recent investments is, I'll come to the Superloop shortly, But prior to the Superloop, I set aside money to increase by more than 1 million kilometres additional buses in outer London. On top of that, now we've got the Superloop, which is 4 million kilometres of additional, bus travel in outer London. SL1 to SL9 are going to be fantastic. I'm really pleased that the third question likes SL9 Superloop 9. We're looking at the success of these express buses because they stop at fewer bus stops and they connect the outer London orbital. They're much faster. And we've had people telling us that actually it's faster to use a Superloop bus than to drive from one town centre to a hospital, one town centre to another town centre. So look at more lessons we can learn. The really exciting news is on some of those Superloops that are previous express routes, we've seen an increase in usage by 60%, 65%, which shows that if you invest in buses, people will come and use them. So great news in relation to Elizabeth Line, great news in relation to Superloop, great news in relation to more buses in outer London, great news in relation to the Barking Riverside. And over the course of the next few weeks and months, should I be elected on May the 2nd as the Mayor, I'll be announcing further examples of the sort of tangible difference we're making in outer London.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I've got some Assembly members indicating on this section. If I could go first to Assembly Member Sian Berry.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm Sian Berry. I'm one of the Green London Assembly members, and I really wanted to tackle this issue about outer London because it's at the heart, I think, of a lot of grievance people feel about being charged to use their cars with the ultra low emission zone. I've asked Londoners whether they feel forced to own a car because of the lack of services, and about a quarter of people in outer London have said yes, they do feel forced to own a car. And I've asked Transport for London and the Mayor to give us the real numbers on bus services. And I'm afraid in outer London, since he took over, since 2015, we've lost 30 million kilometres of bus services in outer London. And he talks really well about some of the improvements he's making now. The Superloop is a good way to put in new bus services, but he said 4 million new. So that doesn't make up at all for the numbers that have been lost. And I think people in outer London do need to see serious investment. We need to see really improve lines like the overground needs better services. We need extensions to trams for outer London, and we need much better buses. And this is something that we've been pushing the Mayor to do as an assembly, as a green group out there in the community. I've been working with people who want to see Transport for London bus services extended through outer London and into the outside of the edges of London as well, where people are really genuinely cut off and trapped in car dependency. It is a problem we're listening to, and it is something that needs serious investment. Unfortunately, the Mayor's biggest investment in transport has been the Silvertown Road Tunnel, a tiny, tiny bit of extra road, when what we need is millions and millions of more bus kilometres. So I hope the Mayor will listen and sort things out in the few months he has left. And I hope that people will look seriously at the policies of other candidates, including from the Greens, when they're deciding how to vote in May.
Thank you, Assembly Member Berry. And I see Assembly Member Pigeon next, please.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm Caroline Pigeon. I'm a Liberal Democrat London Assembly member, and this is my 32nd People's Question Time. I'm delighted to be joining you all, although it's online rather than in person. Just to address some of the points that have come up this evening. Orbital transport around London is so important, and it's something as a Lib Dem, myself and my colleagues have pushed for a very long time. We were delighted when the London Overground eventually joined up at Clapham Junction, and how that's transformed how people get around our city. And so it's really good to see investment in orbital transport now to London, and those buses are really important, but it's the frequency of them. And while some may have increased, actually it's just reversing cuts we've seen. And I have different figures to my colleague who just spoke, but I've seen over the last 6 years, from the questions I've seen, 22 million bus miles have been cut across London. That is not good, and that's not going to encourage people onto public transport. We also want to see some real innovation now to London. There was a fantastic bus trial, the Go Sutton bus trial. There was one in Ealing as well, a kind of demand responsive bus service. It really helps some people use public transport who otherwise would use their car. So that is also something we want to see in outer London, as well as the tram extended to Sutton, something I've been battling for 16 years. But alongside public transport, the Mayor has brought in the ultra-low emission zone to outer London and extended that. But our criticism is not about the policy itself. It's about the time to let people adjust their vehicles, but also the scrappage scheme. It was restricted to start off with. Many people changed their vehicle at great expense with no help towards that cost, to find suddenly they did the right thing, and at the last minute the mayor opened it up to everyone. And Lib Dems have been pushing the mayor time and time again to open it up retrospectively for Londoners who did the right thing to clean up their vehicle. And finally, I want to pick up the point about off-peak Fridays, which I think is really exciting initiative actually from the mayor. I think it's really creative. I think the world will be looking at it, but it's got to be done in partnership with the train operating companies and other operators, and also the nighttime economy. Let's see some offers. I think the mayor had mentioned to me previously. Actually, let's see what we can do to get people back into London on Fridays, as it used to be when I was young going out. Let's really get London vibrant again on a Friday night. So I think that is a really exciting initiative. But in the longer term, unless we get serious investment in public transport right across London, we're not going to see our tube being able to cope, our buses being able to cope, and our trains. We need serious investment, whoever is the next mayor and whoever is next government. And I hope to see that over the years to come.
Thank you, Assemblymember Pigeon. And finally for this set, Assemblymember Harani, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very quick on Superloop, because I know the Superloop 9 route was mentioned in particular, which is the Heathrow to Harrow line, but also some of the positive feedback I've been receiving on the new line, Superloop 10, has also been, I think, a game changer for many people living in my part of the world. I did want to touch on making public transport better in outer London. And I think one of the areas where I think we can see where there should be a lot more improvement, and improvement has been made, is around options for disabled people. Now, the mayor rightly, I think, opened up or reopened the accessible station scheme, which saw in my patch Sudbury Hill and Harrow on the Hill being made step-free after years of no action on accessible stations. But there's a lot more to be done, because if you look at the tube map, a lot of the accessible lines for disabled people are in the centre of London, and where we need to see progress. It's no good if you live in outer London that you can't access a tube in the first place. You have to take a bus or a taxi to a tube station that's not near you, and able to get on there in the first place if you want to visit central London. So there has been, I think, some announcements around feasibility studies and new stations that will be accessible. Again, in my patch, I hope to see that realised in Alperton and Rayners Lane, which are two of the stations that have been announced for feasibility studies. But we do want to, and we do need to see a transport network that is accessible to disabled people as well. And then finally, there is a long-standing scheme, which I think many of us in West and Northwest London have been wanting to see realised, and that is the West London Orbital, which will hopefully, if we do get the right investment, right support from government, but also from councils and from TfL, it can change the way that we have public transport networks, similar to, I think, the improvement we've seen in sort of DLR and the tram network in South and East London, but in North and Northwest London and West London. The West London Orbital is a great way, I think, of using existing lines to improve provision in outer London.
Thank you, Assemblymember Haran. Now, we've got very little time left for transport, but probably time to hear from the Mayor from one more question, which is, everything is just getting more and more expensive, but what are you doing about the cost of public transport, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Chair. Really good question. Look, one of the concerns I've got is how City Hall can support Londoners with the cost of living crisis. And that's one of the reasons I've decided to freeze fares again going forward until at least March 2025. Again, another example of a policy I put forward that's been voted against by the Conservatives. 5 of the last 8 years, fares have been frozen. That means that Londoners have saved 21% versus inflation because of my fares freeze, 14% when you compare our reductions versus the main train operating companies run by National Rail. So that's making a big difference. We also have the cheapest bus fares in the country. For those that aren't aware what it is, it's £1.75. And we've got the hopper fare, which means you can use as many buses or trams within the space of an hour and not pay more than the one bus or tram for £1.75. All these are examples of policies to help Londoners with the cost of living crisis. But also I've resisted the lobbying from central government to remove free travel for those below the age of 18 on buses, below the age of 11 on our tubes. And I've also said no to the government about removing free travel for those above the age of 60. All these things, standing up for London, is helping Londoners during the cost of living crisis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So we are now out of time on transport. If we didn't get to answer your specific question, the online feedback form will explain how to submit your questions and get a reply after the event. So moving on to our next topic, which is policing and safety, and that includes any questions about community safety policing and also the London Fire Brigade. So please don't forget to like the questions in the chat that you want us to answer the most. It's good to welcome Dr. R.D. Cummings from the London Borough of Newham, who will ask the first question on policing and safety. Dr. Cummings.
Hello, hi. My question to the Mayor is simply, what strategies will the Mayor be utilising in regards to reducing knife and gun crime, and also for people who have initiatives that need to be funded? Will those initiatives have clear signposting of any allocated budgets, such as the millions that the Mayor says he's allocated for knife and gun crime? Will he be making those visible so that initiatives that I set over are able to apply for this funding to reduce knife and gun crime?
Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, look, Dr. Cummings, can I thank you for your question? I mean, the safety of London is my number one priority. And what upsets me is the evidence of the last 14 years when it comes to investment or lack thereof from central government in relation to crime prevention and policing. So in London, in the 8 years before I was mayor, we saw a reduction in cash terms and real terms from City Hall money going to the police to the tune of 28% cuts from City Hall to the police. Since 2010 until 2024, we've seen a reduction in real terms of a third of funding from central government to our police. That's £1 billion cut. At the same time, youth clubs have closed down to the tune of 120. Youth workers have lost their jobs. So what I've sought to do since 2016 is invest record sums in police and crime prevention. I've more than doubled, it's actually 103%, money from City Hall going to the police, £1.142 billion from City Hall to the police, being tough on crime, really important enforcement, but also being tough on the complex causes of crime by investing in the country's first violence reduction unit and the Young Londoners Fund. That means more than 300,000 young Londoners have something constructive and positive to do, but also we're providing mentors for up to 100,000 Londoners. We've already reached 70,000 Londoners, and that's going up and up and up each day and each week, really important. The good news, I'm not complacent at all. Is homicides since I became mayor have gone down, gun crime has gone down, the number of young people who are injured with a knife has gone down, burglaries have gone down. It's still far too high, by the way. So we're going to do far more in relation to supporting young people, giving them constructive things to do, distracting them from joining criminal gangs, but also supporting the police as well. And that's why we've adopted a public health approach in London. Dealing with violent crime, you mentioned gun crime and knife crime, dealing with these crimes just like we would a health issue. Stop an infection occurring in the first place. When an infection occurs, deal with it and stop the infection spreading. So invest in youth clubs, youth workers, in youth centres, in police stations, in accident and emergency units, outreach workers. This budget that I announced 2 weeks ago, £6.2 million of additional money in the violence reduction unit, £151 million going to the police as well, enabled police in return at the same time as well. We've got to invest in our young people, deal with the root causes, deprivation, alienation, lack of opportunities, as well as supporting the police as well. And I'm hoping this policy, when we've got a government that's invested in London, will mean more progress being made in our great city.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I've seen a couple of Assembly members indicate on this, so go first to Assembly Member Desai.
Good evening, Chair. My first point is about the need to maintain and indeed promote community cohesion, especially in present times. Respect for diversity uniting, not dividing, promoting civility, bringing people together. These are just some of the remarks the mayor made in his opening statement, and I could not agree more. People, especially those in positions of power, responsibility, authority, and this includes elected representatives, have got to be very careful about what they say, especially in public. And this is why I welcome the mayor's comments campaign, London for everyone. A prime example of the sort of irresponsible language that we do not need is when the Conservative MP recently talked about Tower Hamlets or parts of Tower Hamlets being no-go areas. I'm proud to represent what I regard as the best part of London, otherwise known as City and East, which includes Tower Hamlets. And people in Tower Hamlets from all backgrounds, all nationalities, quite rightly, are indignant, are angry about these very divisive comments from this Conservative MP. Tower Hamlets is full of vibrant, diverse neighborhoods, Wapping, Isle of Dogs, Bow, Whitechapel. And people, as I say, condemn these remarks. I've lived and worked in East London for over 40 years. I reside in Newham, and I do not recognize the Tower Hamlets, the picture of Tower Hamlets that is painted by this particular Conservative member. My second point, Chair, is about resourcing of the Met. Yes, the mayor is absolutely correct to talk about being tough on crime and tough on the causes of crime. But to do both, you need proper resourcing of the Metropolitan Police. The Metropolitan Police has had £1 billion cut from its budget in real terms since 2010, and £1 billion cuts to youth services nationally as well. Cuts have consequences. Cuts do kill. The Met is being underfunded as well for its national duties, which include the large increase in the number of marches, protests, and national events taking place in the capital. These national policing responsibilities should be fully funded by the government, not Londoners. £19 million, yes, £19 million was spent on policing the demonstrations in London from October to December last year. Now, don't get me wrong. I absolutely support the right to protest. It is a fundamental part of our democracy. But this £19 million not only sort of is taken away from the Met's budget, but actually takes police officers away from the neighborhoods that they're meant to be patrolling. That is why it's so important that the government properly funds the Met through the National International Capital City Grant. The mayor has added an additional £151 million in this year's budget for policing and crime prevention. In fact, he has doubled the amount of funding he has given to the police since becoming mayor. The £200 million that the Tory proposed, additional £200 million to the mayor's budget, it was on the back of a fact calculation, figures plucked from thin air. They did not tell us very specifically where this money, this amount of money was going to come from. What we need is proper and adequate government support, which quite for our police force, which quite frankly is not there, it's not coming.
Thank you, Assembly Member Desai. We'll go next to Assembly Member Mwema. I've got another couple of Assembly members who have indicated, but I think in the interest of answering more questions, I'll bring you in, if it's okay, after we do the next round of three. But for this question, let's go to Assembly Member Mwema.
Thank you, Chair. And good evening, everybody. But I'm really proud to represent Hackney, Islington and Waltham Forest at City Hall. And that's a huge constituency which goes all the way from inner London in Islington right the way to Chingford in outer London. And on this particular topic of policing, I want to mention two particular things. The first is the Mayor has mentioned the work that under his leadership has been delivered through the Violence Reduction Unit. But I actually want to talk about some of the amazing life-changing work that I have seen demonstrated in my own constituency, with the Mayor's New Deal for Young People, which funds 150 organisations and more and works with young people to develop mentoring programmes for them. Now, many of these young people may be at risk of entering into lifestyles that we don't want them to, around criminality, or might have other support needs that have been dealt with perhaps not as well as they could have been in the past. And I really think it's important to think about the opportunities that we provide to Londoners. So when we use the phrase diversionary tactic, this is really putting meat on the bones of this particular programme. It's a way to make sure that young people are able to establish careers. What I saw this week in Islington was young people entering into the arts, entering into careers in film and television. It was really, really exciting to see, and really working directly with for example, pupil referral units and young people who have been given a really positive diversionary activity. The second thing I want to mention is that as a member of the Police and Crime Committee, I have been sat through the scrutinies right the way through from the previous commissioner to the current commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley. We are currently looking at the outcomes and the recommendations of the Casey review. And it's really important to note that today is the publication of the Angelini report, as the Mayor mentioned. Now that looks at the way that the rape, murder and kidnap of Sarah Everard was an atrocious incident in the history of our capital, but it looks at what learnings can come from that. And one of the really important things I think that comes from this, will come from this over time, is to make sure that there is proper police reform. So that change in the Metropolitan Police Commissioner was really instrumental to that, making sure that the police addresses misogyny, sexism and homophobia and racism within its ranks, within its staff and its officers, whilst making sure that we support those officers that are good officers so that they can work in a Met that properly polices the capital. We want to also make sure that as far as possible, circumstances like the very tragic ones around Sarah Everard's death and the people whose names we should never forget, Viva Henry and Nicole Smallman, that we don't forget these names, that we make sure that with the investment from the Mayor and the funding from City Hall, that we make sure that we have officers that are well trained, that are right for the capital, able to police our communities and are happy to serve our community. So I'd want to leave it there, but it's just really important for us to remember that without that investment, with at the minimum of the 500 officers that are being brought forward and were mentioned in the budget, we will be looking at a hopefully better police force.
Thank you, Assembly Member Moema. Now we're going to move to the top liked questions from the live chat. And again, I'll take this in a batch of 3. The first question, do you think it's fair that the Met gets less funding than other police forces? The second, Lee Anderson comments were unacceptable. What are you doing to tackle the recent rise in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia? And 3, how are you working to tackle violence against women and girls? I'll go first to the Mayor and then Assembly members. And if I could ask members to keep their answers succinct so we can get through as many questions as possible, please. But first, over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, can I thank you for all 3 questions? I'll keep my comments brief because I know other members want to come in. Look, on Mish I use a phrase which is cuts kill. Cuts kill. Now, what he meant by that was austerity was a choice made by this government, and the cuts that have been made to public services have consequences. Cuts in police officers, police staff, police facilities, cuts in youth workers, public services, and so forth. This is not excusing criminality. It's not excusing it. It's explaining the consequences of these cuts. And we've had a third of our budget cut from central government in real terms about police service. That's £1 billion. On top of that, in the 8 years before I became mayor, we had a further cut of 28% from City Hall. So what we're trying to do is fill the massive hole left by these cuts from central government. And the question is right. London's been treated appallingly by this government since 2010. The phrase I've used is the most anti-London government in history. And what we're trying to do from City Hall is fill that massive hole left by government. More money for the police, more money for young people, more public services to deal with the root causes. And it's starting to make progress in relation to our public health approach. As I said, reducing those young people injured by a knife, reducing gun crime, reducing homicides, reducing burglaries. Look, in relation to the comments from the former deputy chairman of the Conservative Party, what's upsetting is not simply comments made by him that are clearly racist, anti-Muslim and Islamophobic, but the context is the massive increase in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia over the last 4 months. That's the context. And what I find galling is that Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister, Oliver Dowden, the Deputy Prime Minister, the Cabinet, the Conservative candidate running to be the mayor of this great city, none of them can call this out for what it is, which is Islamophobic, anti-Muslim, racist. Now, rightly, anti-Semitism was called out, and it must be called out by all of us. Rightly, we all call out the misogyny and homophobia that we know exists, I'm afraid, in our police service, institutional. Why is everyone so risk-averse, so nervous, so anxious, so unwilling in the Conservative Party to call out Islamophobia, anti-Muslim hatred, and racism. And I think responsible politicians bring communities together. They encourage minorities and Muslims to get involved in mainstream politics, to join a political party, to put their head above the parapet and be a public servant. These comments make that less likely, not more likely. And I say this to my friends in the Conservative Party, and I've got friends in the Conservative Party. Each and every one of us in the Labour Party, they didn't call out anti-Semitism, and I did over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Regrets that. I'm really proud in real time to have called that out. Don't regret, don't be ashamed, don't be one of those people who doesn't call out what's clear Islamophobia, anti-Muslim hatred, and racism, because that's the obligation of all of us as mainstream politicians. In relation to the question in relation to violence against women and girls, listen, Sem was spot on. Yes, we remember today Sarah Everard. We also remember today Nicole, Eva, Zara, Sabina. On International Women's Day, Jess Phillips MP every year in Parliament reads out all the women killed at the hands of a man during the preceding year. You know, every 3 days, a woman across this country is killed by a man. So what are we doing from City Hall? We've invested record sums, £163 million, £163 million, tackling violence against women and girls, starting young in schools, working with primary schools and secondary schools with the Have a Word campaign and the MATE campaign, making boys and men allies to women and girls, supporting survivors and victims of violence against women and girls, providing accommodation for those fleeing domestic abuse, domestic violence, but also tackling perpetrators as well. And I'm really pleased that when I was criticised by the Conservatives for losing confidence in the former commissioner, I stood my ground. She went. We've got a new commissioner who's seeking to reform the Met Police Service. We need to change the systems, the cultures, the practices across police and in the country to make sure we can have not just the police service, a criminal justice system that properly serves women and girls who are the victims of violence against women and girls. I think we can end it, but men and boys are the problem. Not all of us, many of us. We've got to provide allyship to solve this problem.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. Mayor. Now go to Caroline Russell, Assembly Member. And again, we're very short time in this section, so please, could members keep their answers succinct? Assembly Member Russell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to start with Anna's question about violence against women and girls, because today, with the publication of the Angelini report, it should be in all our minds the absolutely devastating list of occasions that were missed opportunities to stop Wayne Couzens in his tracks, get him out of the Metropolitan Police so that he should never have murdered Sarah Everard. And it is, I think, the challenge now for the Metropolitan Police is to make sure that every single Londoner can trust that the police has the right people in the service, and that those people who should never have got through vetting to be police officers are rooted out. I don't think yet that we can completely trust that that has happened, and that is a massive, massive challenge for the Metropolitan Police and for the trust and confidence that Londoners have in the police. Now, Paul, your question about fair funding for the Metropolitan Police, that is a huge question. The government has shortchanged the Met on something called the National Capital Cities and International Capital Cities grant. They're about £240 million down. So we've got a situation where the Prime Minister is calling out, all the money that's being spent on policing protests, and actually the Met are being massively, massively underfunded for doing that, and they really do need to get this sorted out. The cuts have consequences, and one of the issues that's come up in the Angelini review is that the vetting processes are not working well enough, and that's partly because those office staff, the people who are not police officers, but the people who do the HR and the vetting, those jobs have been cut massively by this government, and that is, that has consequences, and we really need to make sure that our police service is properly funded. And then moving on to Lee Anderson, this is Mo's question. It is absolutely disgraceful that Lee Anderson has been been so Islamophobic, and that other government ministers and MPs have joined in too. And with people talking about no-go areas, I mean, that's straight out of the EDL playbook and really has no place in our city. And we're coming up to an election campaign, and the London and Londoners reject racism whenever they encounter it. Back in 2016, there was the racist campaign by Zach Goldsmith, and that Londoners showed him the door and elected Sadiq Khan. We need to make sure that this election that faces us in May, we show racism the door. And Greens have always called out racism, and we will continue to call out racism throughout this election campaign that we're just about to go into. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Russell. Now I hear from Assemblymember Lord Bailey, please.
Good evening, everyone. I am a London-wide Assembly member, and I want to address the question that was posed by the doctor about knife crime. The Mayor talked about cuts having consequences. One of the first things he did, almost the very first thing he did in 2016 when he became Mayor, was remove some of the police recruiting budget, which means is historically we've had pretty low numbers of police in London. He then went on to say that he wasn't a fan of stop and search, which led to 2 record years for homicide. And for the black community, that literally was a question of life and death, and we were the people most likely to be murdered in Europe. Our community has been devastated by the level of homicide in London. Recently, we've just crossed the 1,000 homicide mark since 2016. Again, most of those murders in the black community. The Mayor talked about the VRU. The VRU is a good innovation, but it has had a very hard time explaining what it's doing. Sometimes it's had massive underspends. Again, it's had some notable successes, but it definitely needs to sharpen up its game, because the weight of crime in London, and particularly knife crime, affects some communities significantly more than others. And I repeat, as a black Londoner, you are 4 times more likely to be murdered than your white counterpart. That needs to change. London is terrifying for the black community right now, and we don't see an end to that. And the other thing, the final thing to say, is that the Met has been in special measures for a long time under this Mayor's watch. So he criticised the Conservative group for not supporting him when he removed the previous police commissioner. Just a month or so, 2 months before he removed her, he reinstated her. And that level of confusion, that not back in the Met in the right way, has led to an awful lot of confusion on the ground. It's led to a terrified black community that wants the level of knife crime in London cleared up. The Mayor has the tools to do it. Let's get on and get this job done.
Thank you, Assemblymember Bailey. And finally, and please very briefly, Assemblymember Hirani.
Thank you. I mean, knife crime is a serious issue, and I think it requires participation and coming together of government of all levels, national, regional and local, to help tackle it. And it requires councils getting that investment also in their communities to work with people on the ground. It requires the Mayor working with government also to address it. And I think one of the areas where I think we do need to see a lot of change is in legislation. Now, the Mayor has in the past, and I think others across the country as well, have spoken about legislation and the banning of zombie knives, because it's far too easy and not enough barriers are being put in place to stop people getting their hands on these knives, which then sadly go on to lead to these heinous crimes. It is an issue all across the country as well as London, and London's not the only place that's experiencing knife crime. One knife crime is just one too many. And if you look at Yorkshire Humberside, the Northwest, Wales, East Midlands, Wales all have sort of higher rates of violence with injury per 1,000 in population than London. That's why I think it needs an approach where all levels, all across the country, as well as government, seriously look at legislation. The other bit that hasn't been sort of mentioned, I think, is about hate crime in general, because there's a running theme around violence against women and girls, Islamophobia, and anti-Semitism that was mentioned in the line of questioning. And I think one of the things that we do need to look at is online platforms, social media, and how sometimes it is whipping people up. The algorithms do tend to focus and whether it's directly or indirectly, people are targeted based on some videos that they've viewed, and it just gets people into that psyche of sadly viewing hate material that could fester and could lead to people being motivated to take out crimes based on hate. I think we just need a lot more work to be done working with social media companies, looking at some of those algorithms, but also punishment, and looking at how media companies can act on those and be compelled to act on those.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Hirani. So we are now out of time on policing and safety, and moving on to our next topic, which is air quality and the environment. So please keep an eye on the chat box, like the questions that you want to be answered. And it's good to welcome Hamza Sadiq from the London Borough of Hounslow, one of my boroughs that I represent, who will ask our first question on air quality and the environment. Hamza, please.
What specific actions is the city and you as the mayor taking to tackle air pollution and make the environment sustainable? And how do you intend to guarantee that these initiatives will be successful and accommodate all residents?
Thank you, Hamza. We'll go to you first, Mr. Mayor.
Well, Hamza, thanks for your question. And Chair, I'm not going to suggest there's a preferential treatment there to the Hounslow resident area. Look, Hamza, can I explain my personal interest in this matter, which is in 2014, I trained and I ran the London Marathon, and I was perfectly healthy and fit before I ran the marathon. And weeks afterwards, I realised I was having problems. I was wheezing, I was coughing and so forth, and I thought I was just unfit. And I was diagnosed with adult onset asthma. And that began my journey finding out more about this thing called asthma, what causes it, and so forth. And I discovered this case of Ella Adu-Kissi Deborah, a 9-year-old child who lost their life just after Valentine's Day in 2013. And this began my journey to find out what are the causes, is it reversible, what you can do, and so forth. And the short answer is this, Hamza, that you can't see this killer. You can't see it. It's invisible. It's nitrogen dioxide, particulate matter, but all of us breathe it every day, whether you're outside or inside. The biggest cause of this poison is transport. Now, we know, though, it's preventable, it's not inevitable. We also know no level of exposure to air pollution is safe. So the policy that we've got that's most successful to deal with this is the ultra-low emission zone. We began it in central London. And when I began this journey, Hamza, I was told it would take 193 years to make the air within London within lawful limits. 125 years, 193 years. The units in central London within 1 year reduced the toxicity, the poison, by almost 50%. People opposed it, by the way, before I did it. The Conservatives opposed it. It was so successful, we expanded it to inner London. And you know what? A reduction of 20% in inner London. Again, opposed by the Conservatives. Well, hold on a sec. Why can't those in outer London also benefit from clean air? Why only those of us lucky enough to live in inner and central London? You wouldn't put up with dirty water in outer London. Why dirty air? So a tough, difficult decision for me to take, but I expanded it to outer London 6 months ago today. And we now know 19 out of 20 vehicles are compliant. That's 95%. When I began this journey, Hamza, only 39% were compliant. 39% vehicles were compliant, which means more than 6 out of 10 weren't. Now 19 out of 20 is compliant. We've got air quality monitors across London monitoring how well this is working. We'll be publishing, TfL will be publishing the results in relation to outer London. At the same time, we have more zero emission buses than any city in the world, more than 1,300. More than half our taxis are now zero emission. We've got more rapid charging points than any city in the Western world. More than a third of the charging points in the country are here in London. We've planted more than 500,000 trees. We're rewilding our cities, supporting councils to take action against wood burning, taking action to make sure on construction sites there is no poison being emitted. So we're doing what we can from City Hall. But Hamza, where's the support from the government? Where is the support from the government? And the reason why it's so galling is this is an issue of social injustice and racial injustice. Those least likely to own a car suffer the worst consequences. It's Black, Asian, minority ethnic Londoners, the poorest Londoners, who suffer the worst consequences. Children with stunted lungs, adults with asthma, cancer, dementia, heart disease, premature deaths. Look, you know, the good news, King's College now say, rather than waiting 193 years for air to be lawful, by 2025, the air within London will be within lawful limits, but not if we roll back on the progress we've made. And the choice of May the 2nd is, you know, us embedding the progress we've made, or somebody else who could win, the Conservative candidate, who's going to reverse the progress we've made. And I'm very worried about that.
Thank you for the answer, Mr. Mayor. I've got Assemblymember Bakari next, please.
Thank you, Hamza, for your question. And I'm a big fan of Hounslow. I've got a lot of family who live there. And one of the things I've always noticed about Hounslow is the amount of planes that go through the air as well. And one of the things that the Liberal Democrats are campaigning on is to have no third runway and less planes going across our skies, as well as the air pollution. You're having to deal with a lot of noise pollution too, as well, in your area. Hamza, there are other things that are worrying me about air pollution. That is wood burning. 17% of London's particulate matter pollution actually is attributed to wood burning. And the Liberal Democrats want to make sure that we have a public awareness campaign on this so that more people realise that if you're buying something like a wood burning stove, you are going to be damaging your health and the air around you. The other thing is that the Liberal Democrats have just recently been working on a budget amendment, which was called the Green Doctors Amendment. It was about a charity that is doing such fantastic work and helping reduce emissions. And they are going into people's homes and helping people reduce their emissions as well as their bills, because that actually goes hand in hand when it comes to tackling these issues. The amendment was successful at the first point, but unfortunately the Labour group did vote against it. So it hasn't gone through. And I think that young people, particularly in London, are desperate to see more when it comes to our environment and making sure that we can tackle air pollution. As well as that, young people also want to make sure that we have an opportunity for young people to do as much as they can to go around the world. We had another amendment that was an Erasmus-style opportunity that will allow young people to travel, to volunteer, to be able to work. Unfortunately, again, Labour did manage to oppose that too. So there are lots of things that the Liberal Democrats want to do that's going to bring in change. If you vote for the Liberal Democrats this May, you will see a real positive difference to London and pushing the Mayor to do better, particularly on air pollution. And remember, we were the party that were against the Silvertown Tunnel, which is one of the reasons that our air pollution will never be tackled if we're having more roads instead of less. Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember Bakari, and I've got Assemblymember Dr. Sahota indicating now.
Thank you, Chair. Hamza, thank you very much for that very important question. Apart from being an assembly member, a politician, I'm also a doctor, and I really practice already in South, already near your hometown. But look, I see the impact of poor air quality on patients. I see children gasping for air when they get asthma attacks. And it's to the credit of this mayor that he has taken this head on and has taken positive steps to take it. We've known for a long time, we've known since the time of Boris Johnson, that the air quality in London is poor and that we need to do something about it. But this can has been pushed down the road for so long. And Sadiq Khan came along and said, this needs to be addressed, and it's to his credit. And poor air quality isn't just about asthma. It also affects your heart disease, it affects your brain, it affects your dementia, and it's an important disease, it's an important area to be addressed. And only today, for example, the NHS London has set up a scheme where healthcare professionals will be alerted to on the air markers, the air quality in London, so they can be pre-warned about the impact it's going to have on asthmatic patients and the impact it's going to have on their caseloads. So this is, again, an initiative by the mayor in conjunction with the public health, alerting healthcare professionals and also underlining how important air quality is to us in our lives. And we should never have to choose between whether do we get a good air quality or the economic crisis. The economic crisis which we're facing has been caused by this government, right, not by this mayor. And there was no, bringing in the ULEZ at this time was the right thing to do. It was important for your air quality, for your air and my, for my lungs. Air really affects the life we live, and I think that it's a very important question, and we need to carry on improving air quality in London because our lives literally depend upon it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. In the interest of time, I'm going to bring in the next three questions. The first is, I'm sick of seeing burst pipes flooding Islington and sewage destroying our rivers. What are you doing about this? The second, when we are in a burnt-out planet, our economy wrecked, our infrastructure tired and devastated by extreme weather, do you think we should be making a culture war out of car ownership? And third, how many trees have you planted while you've been mayor, and can you ban trees from being cut down? Over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Nick, for those three questions. Look, I think Thames Water have been diabolical for years. This is a company privatised, and the governance of Thames Water has been a shambles. So I've met on 2 occasions in the recent past with Ofwat, who are the regulators who are in charge of Thames Water, explaining my frustration at exactly the point you've raised. Not simply the burst water pipes in Islington, but across our city, record numbers of leaks. They're regularly digging up our roads, not organising when they dig up the road. So the same road can be dug up 4 times in the same year by Thames Water. And as you've said in your question, record amounts of spillage in the River Thames and elsewhere as well. And I think the government's got to get a grip. I'm afraid we've tried our best with Thames Water, organised roundtables, met with them to discuss issues like how to prevent flash flooding, how to prevent water leaks, how to take preventative actions, how to coordinate roadworks being dug up. It's not really made much difference. And so what we need is the government to give Ofwat more teeth, to talk about what the shareholders can do. In the past, they've taken out a record amount of dividends from this company, and they're asking the government and taxpayers to bail them out in relation to investing in Thames Water and the infrastructure by increasing our bills. I thought the idea about privatisation was the profits are used to invest in infrastructure, not when times are good, they take the profits out. When there's a need for infrastructure, the taxpayer pays. And I think those in charge, who love the free market, like this government does, need to step in and get a grip on Thames Water. The second point is really important in relation to our ability, our willingness, our appetite to tackle the climate emergency being turned into a culture war. And we've heard sensible, intelligent people, or so I thought, espousing conspiracy theories about 15-minute cities, about banning red meat, and about all sorts of other nonsense coming from senior members of this government. They've turned this into, pro-motorist, anti-motorist. It isn't. It's pro-clean air, anti-clean air. It's pro-saving the environment, not saving the environment. It's being a progressive, forward-looking net zero carbon city, creating jobs, using the crisis of climate change as an opportunity to create future-proof green jobs. Who's going to make the electric vehicle charging points? Who's going to install them? Who's going to retrofit our buildings? Who's going to build the wind turbines? Who's going to build the solar panels? Who's going to install them? These are opportunities. And we've seen the fastest growing economy in the world. Guess where? The United States of America, where the president there has invested in tackling the climate emergency. And what we're going to do is try and lobby whoever forms the next government to take bolder action when it comes to tackling the climate emergency, and not allow those of us who are passionate about this issue to be used as proxies in this culture war. Which leads to the third question in relation to trees. Look, I remember, I'm afraid older than some on this call. I did O-levels rather than GCSEs. I remember my O-level biology, basic photosynthesis, and the benefits and joys of trees. They take in basically the bad stuff, the carbon dioxide, and they put out the good stuff, oxygen. They're great in relation to shading when it comes to heat waves. And I'm afraid the bad news is 2 years ago, we saw more wildfires in London than records show, but also the fire brigade being the busiest it's been since the Second World War in the Blitz, because they had to put out wildfires. We saw this year the hottest July just gone, the hottest July in history, the hottest September in history. So the joy of trees is they provide shading, and the great news is we've planted more than 500,000 trees since I became mayor. To give you context, the previous mayor during his tenure planted 150,000 trees. So we've increased that threefold. I've got to confess, I haven't planted them all myself, but the 500,000 one I did with Senator Leonie Cooper. She's claiming the credit for the $500 million tree, but I think, Leonie, my hands were dirty and yours weren't. So we're planting more trees.
Mr. Mayor, sorry, could you bring your comments to a conclusion, please, so we can hear from Assembly members?
Sure. Listen, Nick's bringing my comments to a close, not because he's anti-trees, but because I've spoken for too long. But we're going to plant more trees if I get the privilege of being elected on May the 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And so our first Assembly member to come in here is Assemblymember Cooper. We don't have very much time left on this section, so please be as brief as you can. Assemblymember Cooper.
Thanks very much, Chair. And it's my name's Leonie Cooper, and I'm the Assembly member for Merton and Wandsworth. And yes, I was with the Mayor when the 500,000th tree got planted, 500,000 trees. And it was a great occasion because there were young people there who were talking about their enthusiasm for trees. And we need to keep that enthusiasm going across all the generations and making sure that it's not just politicians who are planting trees, but also we are involving communities. And that's been one of the really good things that the Mayor has done since 2016, is to fund community groups so they can get involved in planting and growing across London to help clean up our city, but also to make it a much more pleasant place. In terms of cars, look, I was also with the Mayor actually back in 2018 when he launched the first low emission bus zone. It's been quite the journey that London has been going on since 2016 to clean up the air. It's been about buses, it's been about taxis, it's been about the ultra low emission zone, but it's not a war on cars. It's about moving the whole of the city to being cleaner as well as greener, as we were just saying. And it's something that we really have to do. The reason it was being launched in Putney High Street was because Putney High Street, along with Brixton Road and Oxford Street, broke the law on the second or third day of every year in January, before the low emission bus zone came in and before the ultra low emission zone was launched thereafter, because the air was so disgustingly filthy. And hundreds of local residents writing to me about the state of the air and particularly the impact on children's lungs. It's so important that we continue this work in terms of children's health. And finally, just on water, I've also been chairing the Environment Committee over this last year, and we've just done a big investigation into water. One of the things that we've found out, and our report's just about to come out, is there are issues about the underfunding of the Environment Agency, which is something that the central government, for some reason, has taken money away. So you can't enforce on the water companies because they haven't got the staff to pursue the environmental investigations that they need to undertake. So that needs to happen. And we have been meeting with the Chief Executive of Thames Water privately as well as publicly to get that good interaction going, to make sure that alongside the Mayor, that the Assembly is making sure that the water companies step up and recognise that they must take on their responsibilities in a more effective way. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Assemblymember Cooper, and apologies to Assembly members who are looking to come in on this, but we are now out of time on air quality in the environment. And to members of the public, if we didn't answer your specific question, the feedback form will explain how to submit your questions after the event. So to move on now to our next topic, which is housing. So please keep liking your favourite chat questions and adding your own questions. And welcome to Chrisley Lionel from the London Borough of Croydon, who will ask the first question on housing.
Hello.
Chrisley, the floor is yours.
Hi. Hello, good evening to all Assembly members, panelists, and all the members of the public. So thanks very much for the Mayor for taking the the questions. And my question is about housing. We all know that we are amidst a housing crisis, and wages are not following the astronomical increases in rental prices. And also with the cost of living crisis, more families are being pushed out of London. And we don't seem to have enough savings as a family to buy houses. So what are the plans for family housing? What is the government doing to help families afford housing?
Thank you for the question. Over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, Christy, thank you very much for your question. I mean, look, we face a housing crisis. We can't beat about the bush. And this housing crisis has been decades in the making. The short explanation is the supply of genuinely affordable homes is not met up with the demand. And that's been compounded by the affordable homes we have been sold off under right to buy and not replenished. So for every 6 council homes sold off in the last 40 years, every 6, only 1 has been rebuilt in its place. So there's less and less genuinely affordable homes, but also the pipeline is not as high as it could be. That's by way of background and context. And that's led to a situation where 2.7 million Londoners are now living in private rented accommodation, no real security of tenure. The rents go up by massive percentages every 6 months or every year, and they can be evicted even though they've done nothing wrong, and the conditions of the home are awful, often mouldy, often damp. That's the context. So what are we doing about it? So since 2016, well, I should say, in my first year as mayor, I asked the question, how many council homes are in the pipeline? So in the year before I became mayor, how many in the pipeline? The answer was 3. Not 3,000, not 300, 3 council homes in the pipeline in the year before I became mayor. We're now building more council homes than any time since the 1970s. And yes, they include family homes, 3, 4, 5 bedroom council homes, more homes any time since the 1970s. The number of completions, homes completed, including family homes, more than any time since the 1930s, about 10,000 more a year than the previous mayor, but it's still nowhere near enough. So I put together a group of experts led by Tom Copley, the Deputy Mayor for Housing, those in the private sector, those from councils, those from housing associations, those from experts, and what can we do to increase the supply to meet the demand? And they put forward a business case, and we put it to the government, and we basically need £4.9 billion a year to meet, so supply meets demand. The government said no in relation to that. And what we've said to them is, look, at the moment, we know the property market is quite depressed. There's a perfect storm in relation to the pressures on the property market. Now's the time to build in family-sized council homes. We're going to carry on lobbying the government. In the meantime, we're saying to the government, why don't you make it easier, safer, better for those living in private rental home by freezing rents? They did that in Scotland, but also by improving the quality of accommodation, but removing no-fault eviction, what's called Section 21. Again, the government's delaying, dithering, watering down their original plan. So we're going to carry on doing what we can from City Hall, but we've got a fraction of the budget that we need in this area. So we're going to carry on lobbying the government, and ultimately, I'm afraid, we need a change of government to have a situation where finally the supply of homes meets the demands, and they're the right sorts of homes. That's very important, the right sorts of homes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we're going to take Assembly Member Sakina Sheikh next, please. Assembly Member Sheikh.
Thank you, Chris Lee, for that really important question. And I think for me, it's not just about making sure we provide the homes for families, but it's about making sure we create the spaces in London where people feel safe and children feel safe and spaces feel inclusive of families. And that's why I'm really proud to chair the Planning Regeneration Committee, because we look at exactly that, how good design led by the Mayor's policies can make London feel inclusive for families. But you're really spot on to talk specifically about the housing crisis. The Mayor's absolutely spot on. This has been decades in the making. And what do we have in common? Decades in the making of a housing crisis and a Conservative government for the last 14 years. So I think actually those things aren't a coincidence. I think this is a very constructed crisis. I think we have a government that does not care about certain people in our society. And I'd certainly put renters at the top of that list. I know so many people who have escalating rent. They cannot afford to live in this fantastic city because their landlords have no checks and balances, and Section 21 emboldens landlords to kick people out of their homes even though they have done nothing wrong. And so I've been really proud to see our mayor come out repeatedly in support of rental rights, but also to call on the government to finally pass the rental reform bill, which has only very recently been passed despite it being 4 years in the making. And I just don't understand why this government has dragged its heels year after year on making sure that renters in London and people in London can get the support they need to thrive and have the safety of housing. So I think not only are we in a sort of housing crisis, and although we're doing everything we can from City Hall in particular, you know, the most home completions since the 1930s that we've heard about, the most social housing starts from the 1970s that we've heard about. But actually, we're on the front foot about more progressive parts of how we ensure our housing market can be world leading in terms of our retrofit. So we've seen a huge and fantastic program of retrofit from the mayor. This makes people's homes warmer, this lowers people's bills. But I was also really excited to see a couple of weeks ago in the mayor's budget a huge amount of money going towards adult education to skill up Londoners in the green industry so that we can have more people sustainably working to help retrofit our homes. So yes, absolutely we're in a housing crisis. Absolutely we need the government to pull out their finger and finally put the rights back into renters' living conditions. And actually I think we probably just need to change a government because they've demonstrated they can't do their job properly. But absolutely, we should be proud of the record we have in London. But we just
Member, could you draw your comments to a close, please? We're getting close to time on this section.
Please take back over, Chair.
Thank you very much. I now want to hear from Assemblymember Garrett, please.
Thank you. Good evening. So I'm Assemblymember Garrett. I'm actually the Assemblymember for Croydon and Sutton, so it's a place very close to my heart. The question was about family housing, and it's great disappointment to me that the Mayor's plan doesn't really prioritise family housing. When Labour were in control of Croydon, they prioritised demolishing family homes to build blocks of flats. And we also saw Croydon Labour making the national news in the most unfortunate way with the Regina Road flats, which were found to be completely uninhabitable in the most appalling state. And Croydon Labour actually said they wanted to tackle bad landlords. They set up a register, and what turned out was that actually the Croydon Labour group running the council were the biggest slum landlord in Croydon. But here's the good news. The good news is that under Conservatives, that whole area around Regina Road is being demolished and rebuilt with good quality new homes for families in Croydon. Almost 90% of the residents backed that plan. And I think just in that small example in Croydon, you see the difference between Labour politicians who are making speeches but ignoring the real problems, while Conservatives are actually getting things done and improving people's lives. And that's what we're seeing here in Croydon. And I really wish we could see that across London.
Thank you very much, Assemblymember Garrett. Now we'll go to the 3 questions from the chat. So the first one, I've just been made homeless for no reason. Why have no-fault evictions still not been banned? I thought this was supposed to happen years ago. That's from Jada. The second question from Leonard, my mortgage has doubled and my bills have gone through the roof. What has the effect been on other Londoners? And the third question from Robert, people need proper council homes. What are you doing to build them? So over to you, Mr. Mayor, and then Assembly members.
Well, Chair, for those watching this PQTs, I've got a comment on what Neil Garrett just said. It's like a Martian has just landed on planet London. He doesn't realise he's been in control for the last 14 years of the government who's responsible for the housing crisis for the last 14 years. Message to Neil Garrett from planet Mars, your party's been in charge for the last 14 years. Let's talk about the consequences of the last 14 years of Conservative rule. The first question in relation to being evicted for no good reason. Well, guess what, Mr. Garrett, who's been in charge for the last 14 years, who's promised getting rid of no-fault eviction for the last 4 years, who's broken their promise year after year after year after year. 3 big problems to the question that we have in private rental accommodation. One, the rent keeps going up, and the government's done nothing to address that. Do you know why? Because record numbers of Conservative MPs are landlords. Surprise, surprise. Conflict of interest. More than 50 Conservative MP landlords are putting pressure on Michael Gove to dilute the plans he first published 4 years ago. The second big issue for those tenants in the private sector is the condition of those homes, damp and mold, etc., which has not been addressed by government legislation. The third big issue, spot on, no-fault evictions. A landlord, if you dare to complain about the damp and mold, will you know what they'll do? They'll tell you to leave the property for no good reason at all. If you complain about the rent going up, do you know what they'll do? Tell you to leave for no good reason at all. And every week in London, 300 Londoners are evicted for no good reason. Guess who's in charge of the government? I'll tell you the answer, Neil Garrett, the Conservatives. So that's the first question. We've got to lobby the government, put pressure on the government to finally get rid of no-fault eviction. And if they won't, let's vote in a new law at the next general election that will. The second question that was asked is in relation to mortgages. Again, guess what? Guess who was the Prime Minister? Guess who was the Chancellor that had a kamikaze budget that led to your mortgages being doubled, that you're talking about, led to Londoners facing the prospect of being made homeless because their house being repossessed? I'll tell the man from Mars who it is. Liz Truss, the former Conservative Prime Minister, Kwasi Kwarteng, the former Conservative Chancellor. But the best piece of chutzpah is nobody else I can think of on the Labour side or the Green side or the Lib Dem side celebrated that budget. But there was one person who did celebrate their budget, somebody called Susan Hall. I quote, she called Liz Truss a class act and expressed deep joy at that mini budget. Well, you're paying the consequence in relation to your mortgage being doubled because of that budget. And the third question was in relation to council homes. Look, the legacy I inherited in my first year was not 3,000, not 300, but 3 council homes in the pipeline. We've smashed the records. Most council homes began anytime since the 1970s. Every single borough in London now is playing their part, Conservative, Lib Dem and Labour. We need more support from the central government to build even more council homes because they're genuinely affordable, not these luxury penthouse flats bought by foreigners as gold bricks in our properties in London. Nothing against foreigners, some of my best friends are foreigners, but we need homes for Londoners rather than an investment for those in the Far East and Middle East.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Now we'll hear from Assembly Member Zach Polansky, please.
Thank you very much. Good evening. I'm Zach Polansky. I'm from the City Hall Greens. First of all, Jada, I just want to start on a personal note that to hear anyone's been made homeless is always horrific. I've had that lived experience myself of facing no-fault eviction and having to crowd surf and go from home to home, and we really do need reform. The Renters Reform Bill very much has not been passed, and the Green Party have been pushing that all the way. The Mayor is right. There is far too many Conservative MPs or MPs generally in the House of Commons who are landlords, and it's really important that we hold the government's feet to the fire, whoever the government is. Leonard's question, I think, cuts to the chase on all of this, which is about bills being higher than they've ever been before. We hear so much talk about a cost of living crisis, but really what we're facing is an inequality crisis. There are multi-millionaires and billionaires in our city who are doing better than they ever have before, flying around in their private jets, while so many people are struggling every day just to put food on the table and heat their homes. One of the biggest things we can do is make sure that all homes are insulated properly and retrofitted. Retrofit means installing things like solar panels, heat pumps, making sure that we're layering up those homes. This is a triple win. It reduces the bills, which is really important for those who are struggling. It also helps to tackle the climate crisis, and it creates good green jobs. But the problem here is the Mayor has moved so slow on this. In 2018, he declared a retrofit revolution, but since then, only 1% of homes that need it have been upgraded under his warmer homes. If we go at this pace, the homes that need to be retrofitted won't even be been done by the 22nd century. Now, the Mayor has given some more money to this, and that's welcome. That follows some report and some exposure that I did of his gap, but we need to move much faster. He has a £320 million adult education budget, and this needs to be given the priority it needs. More widely, though, he talks about a future government. Well, we know this future government have already abandoned their £28 billion climate pledge. That's if Keir Starmer's Prime Minister. But right here at home in London, Sadiq Khan has built the Silvertown Motorway Road Tunnel, which the Green Party have been at the heart of, with campaigners campaigning against. He also has not condemned the use of private jets, while people mock those in poverty beneath him. And he took free airline tickets from United Airlines, who are the sponsors of Pride. We need a mayor who won't just talk the talk on climate, but will walk the walk. And that's Zoe Garbett by voting Green on May the 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you, Assembly Member Polansky. Can I hear next from Assembly Member Mwema? Thank you.
Thank you again, Chair. And just to the 3 Londoners with their questions, I'm also on the Housing Committee, and I'm Deputy Chair to Assembly Member Lord Bailey's chair this year. And one of the things that I just wanted to expand on and anticipate, really, we've had 2 programmes to build homes here in London, 2 affordable homes programmes called the AHP. The first was £4 billion, The second was £4.82 billion. Now, just in anticipation of the fact that people will say, oh, well, the mayor hasn't, you can't live in a start, the homes haven't started. That money was only signed off by central government after a massive delay. It was only signed off in July last year. So we have a job of work to make sure that all of the partners, housing associations, developers, and others are able to deliver on the homes that London needs. But to your specific point, the first question about why is it that wages have not followed rent increases and mortgage increases? I was speaking to a group of constituents and campaigners today and talking to people about the fact that here in my constituency, over a period of time, rents have gone up by, private sector rents have gone up by 49% since 2010. So it's really important to think about, I don't know if anybody's had a 49% pay increase, but we need to make sure that we have some way of making sure that rents are somehow pegged to the incomes that people have. Now, I know that the Mayor Sadiq Khan has introduced the London Living Rent, which is an excellent way of benchmarking, updated every year, and it's publicly available information for those that want to see it. Of a third of local incomes is the acceptable rent that a person should be paying. Now, under Sadiq's leadership, more and more developers and housing associations are working towards building more London living rent homes. And we need to make sure that with a future Labour government, that is a benchmark that we continue to work towards. And in terms of the gaps between what you're bringing home and what you're paying, there's also a huge issue around mortgage interest rates. You know, what was affordable 6 months ago is now absolutely not affordable to anybody of any income, because we also need to recognise that people want to buy homes. So we need to make sure that the Treasury, hopefully under new leadership in a few months' time, is working with lenders to bring down interest rates so that families like yours can afford a home.
Thank you very much. We are now out of time on housing, so moving on to our next section, which is London's economic recovery. And our next question is from Matea Benjak from the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham, who will ask the first question on London's economic recovery. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Why are the salaries in London low in comparison to extremely high cost of living and housing? What are the measures you're doing to balance this out? It seems that this city is where only rich can have a great quality of life.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mayor, over to you to answer that question, please.
Well, Matea, thanks for your question. And your experience is what many Londoners share with me every day. The cost of living is causing huge challenges to Londoners. In the previous section, other colleagues explained some of the reasons why mortgages have gone up, why rents have gone up and so forth. And we know the consequence of government policies. So from City Hall, what we're doing is trying to make it less hard for you to get through the cost of living crisis, because we know many Londoners are just about managing. Many Londoners are going without essentials. That's why I'm really proud, Matea. For the first time in the history of our great city, every child that goes to a state primary school receives a free school meal, nutritious free school meal. That saves the family with one child £1,000 over those 2 years. So you've got 2, 3, 4 children, you save thousands of pounds. In 5 of the last 8 years, since I've been mayor, the fares have been frozen. They'll be frozen again next year. We know that saves the Londoners about 21% versus inflation, which is really important to help people like you, Matea, during the cost of living crisis. But also, we know many Londoners are eligible for benefits, but they're not applying for them. So I've put aside money, more than £4 million for law centres and CABs, to give free advice to people who may be eligible for benefits, to support them during this cost of living crisis. Incredibly important. We're still going to lobby the government to remove the cap for those with 2 children who only get child benefit for 2 children, to lift the cap on those who are receiving benefits, to support those who receive universal credit with an extra £20 during the pandemic to bring that back, but also to ameliorate some of the cases you're talking about. So if we can have rent freezes, that would really help people like you, Matea, to get through the cost of living crisis. Rent controls would really help people like you who are renting. More supply of genuinely affordable homes would really help you, but also making sure people get a decent wage for doing a hard day's work. I'm incredibly proud. Since I've been mayor, working with partners, we've increased the London living wage by more than 40%. It's £11.85 an hour now, and more employers are signing up to be London Living Wage employees, an increase of sixfold since I've been mayor. And the great news when you speak to the employers is it helps with recruitment, helps with retention. They're more productive because they're being paid a decent day's wage. What I worry about, Matthias, is people being priced out of our city. Not just bus drivers and cleaners and porters, but junior teachers, junior doctors, junior police officers being priced out of our city. That'd be bad for London. And that's why, yes, we'll do what we can with the limited resources and powers we have. Yes, we'll lobby the government, but really, after 14 years, it's time for a change of government.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. Mayor. I see indication from Assemblymember Ahmed. Excuse me, Assemblymember Ahmed, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think we need to be very clear about the economic situation in London. Let's be very clear. Londoners are worse off under this government. This Parliament is on track to be the first ever Parliament where household incomes will be less than when it actually came into being. Wages are below the 2008 level. There is an endemic problem around wages, and that specifically does affect Londoners more disproportionately. Those wages are not likely to go up again now until 2028, another 4 years. An indication for Londoners about how bad the situation is universal claimants and how many people are claiming. Over 1 million people are now claiming universal credit in London. 40% of those claimants are actually in work. So that's 400,000 people for whom work is not paid, it doesn't pay because they have to claim benefits to make ends meet. Where the government has refused to do anything about this, the mayor has chosen to increase the living wage, London living wage by 10%. And then I think we just need to remember that since Sadiq Khan was elected in 2016, the London living wage has gone up by 40%. Sadiq talked about universal free school meals for children. This is an issue that is incredibly close to my heart. As people know, it's something that I've campaigned on vociferously. Let's be really clear. Universal free school meals feeds children and it helps families. It is really sad and disappointing that last week, during the vote on the budget, both the Conservatives and the Lib Dems voted against funding universal free school meals. Food prices across London, across the country, have risen by 25% in the last 2 years, and 35% of families are buying less food and essentials for their children. The mayor's funding for universal free school meals is actually more than the government's funding for the free school meals that the government provides. So in the 2024-25 budget, our funding for each meal will be £3. It's about the economy. It's about the economy and the reality of Londoners' lives, Chair. Let's just be really clear. No child.
We need to hear from other questions from other Londoners, and we need to hear from other Assembly members as well. So I'm going to move on to the next questions from the live chat. And again, we'll do 3. The first one, are your off-peak Fridays just an election gimmick? And that's from Linda. The second one, do you really think you're doing enough to help young people get into employment or training? And that's from Emma. And the third one, what have you done to support small businesses when their costs are so high to stop mass closures and mass job losses? And that's from Chris. So, Mr. Mayor, if I could go to you with those 3 questions, please.
Can I thank everyone for those questions? All 3 of you, excellent questions. I'll take them in order that I was asked. So look, let's do Friday. Off-peak Friday is about supporting not just people back to the office, not just supporting leisure and tourism, but to help our economies, who are really struggling, retail, culture, hospitality, but also to address the issue that was just raised by the questioner that Marina Ahmed was talking about, to help Londoners during the cost of living crisis. And it's incredibly important we get our city bouncing back, because not only does that mean more businesses flourishing and thriving, it means more people being employed, more people buying stuff, more people paying taxes, more people paying national insurance, and that benefits our public services as well. So if we're able to pull this off, it will take place for at least 3 months. We'd wait and see if the trial was a success. We'd monitor stations in Zone 1 and Zone 2. We'd monitor Pan London. We'd monitor different days of the week to see if there are any, perverse consequences. And the idea is we see if we can change the numbers on a Friday where only 73% are using public transport. And by the way, cities across the globe, I speak to New York, LA, Chicago, Paris, Madrid, Barcelona, Dhaka, Delhi, Hong Kong, Singapore, they're all excited about what we can see over the next 3 months. It's about helping our economy and Londoners. The second question was about helping young people. It's really important to talk about two policies that have been touched upon in the last hour and a half, but are really important. One is the New Deal for young people, providing 100,000 young people with a mentor. I benefited in my life with mentors, both when I was a child, youth workers, big brothers, my mum and my dad, but also later on, I have mentors now. They're really important, somebody you can speak to, give you advice, give you counsel, give you wisdom. Too many young Londoners, particularly those in deprived communities, those who experience domestic violence at home, those who have been excluded from school, those who are in the care sector, those who are in young offence institutions, haven't got a mentor. And this will really improve their life chances. And the other big thing we're doing is using the adult education budget to help those people in those parts of our city who have got huge potential, but haven't got access or training to get the jobs that we're created in London. The great news is we're also providing more apprentices for those Londoners who need the skills to do the jobs tomorrow. 1 million more Londoners have received training because of our education budget. Third really important question, the small business person. I used to help run a small business. The stress of knowing whether your bank overdraft will stretch, whether business rates are going to go up, whether you'll be able to pay the wage bill at the end of the month is really, really an anxiety small businesses go through. So we've set up a one-stop shop for small businesses in London. It's called Grow London. So just at the end of this PQT, go to Grow London and you'll see all the advice and assistance you need. We've also set up a scheme where we give you access to capital, whether it's venture capital, whether it's private equity, so you can not just incubate, but you can accelerate and expand. And we have an international Mayor's Business Programme where you can go overseas to build links and so forth. We've supported so far more than 12,000 small businesses. There's been more than 70 international trade missions that London partners have led on. And because of City Hall intervention, we've helped create more than 330,000 new jobs. Not us creating the jobs, the private sector with our support.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'll go to now Assembly Member Boff.
Of course the off-peak Friday is an election gimmick. Of course it is, and it's so good of you to pick that up and perceptive of you. When we asked the Mayor's Deputy Mayor of the Transport Committee only the other day how this was going to be paid for, he couldn't tell us. He didn't know which budget it was going to come from. So yes, of course it's an election sweetener. And the Mayor goes on about rent freezes as a solution to the cost of living crisis. Well, of course, that's the dumbest thing in the world that anyone could say, because there is nowhere in the world where rent freezes haven't resulted in fewer homes to rent. It will actually perversely make housing in London that much more expensive. And the Mayor's failure to build family-sized housing, in fact, he got rid of the previous Mayor's target for family-sized homes. His failure to build those homes has resulted in the costs increasing and the amount of money, the purchase price of family-sized homes being increasing as well. The adult education, and I'm pleased that that question was raised, needs to be focused in areas where the need is greatest, and we don't see that coming from the Mayor. One of the other things that might help make London more affordable is to stop the increase in council tax year in, year out. Since Sadiq Khan was elected, there has been a 57% increase in his precept, his council tax. And with regard to small businesses, many of these small businesses that are under pressure are in central London and are entertainment venues providing the nighttime economy. The mayor has managed to achieve what no previous mayor has ever done before. He's making central London's nightlife boring, despite a small fortune being spent on a nighttime czar who's supposed to sort it out. London's venues, nighttime venues, are closing down at a rate that would make the Blitz blush. He's well-funded publicity on London, and there's millions going into it. His well-funded publicity on London suggests he's solving the problem of the London's economy in London. The reality is London is now becoming more akin to the Willy Wonka experience, and it's time he went.
Thank you, Assembly Member. Now go to Assembly Member Cooper. I'm afraid you only have a little under 2 minutes, so Assembly Cooper, off you go.
Thanks very much, Chair. Well, contrary to some of the stuff that was being spouted by Assembly Member Boff, the Mayor and TfL have looked at the problem of people not coming back onto public transport and have addressed it. I mean, Fridays, we've all seen that there's less people using public transport, less people. And so enticing people back in and getting people into the centre of town actually might address the point that Assembly Member Boff was trying to make about the centre of London being boring. So, I would have thought you would have supported the off-peak fares. The Mayor has had a lot of support across the creative sector, really interesting initiatives which haven't been mentioned, and I don't think we've got time to go into them this evening. But there's a lot of young people who've been, getting into that sort of area. And one of the things we've looked at through the Environment Committee has also been looking at the kind of skills that people need to move into the low carbon sector. And I held a day at City Hall where I brought together businesses with colleges, and everybody was talking. It was a really exciting morning in City Hall where people were talking about the initiatives that the Mayor has been taking, what more can be done by getting the right people in the room together. That's the kind of thing that we can do at City Hall. And if only we had a government who was properly supporting us. Yes, the Mayor has had to put up council tax, just to address a remark from the previous speaker. But hey, maybe that's because central government has been supporting London and City Hall much less than it should be, and much less than it supports other areas. So,
if you could
we are doing,
to a close, please.
The Mayor is doing absolutely the best for Londoners at every opportunity. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So that's we're out of time now on the topic of economic recovery. And for the last section of the meeting, we'll take your questions on topics that haven't been covered so far. We really don't have an awful lot of time left, so please register your light questions quickly. And these could cover things like health or culture, for example. And we welcome Philip Moshi from the London Borough of Richmond upon Thames, another one of my patches, who will ask the first question in this section. Philip.
What was it that made you provide universal free school meals to primary school children throughout London? What benefits do you think it will bring to children, families and schools?
Thank you, Philip. Mr. Mayor.
Well, Philip, thanks for your question. Look, this is personal to me. I benefited from means-tested free school meals. They transformed my life. That was one less thing for my parents to worry about, and I'm really grateful. But you know what? I don't remember what I ate on those days. What I remember is the queue I stood in to get my token to receive a free school meal. My embarrassment. I remember my shame. I remember my mates being elsewhere having their meals and me being in a queue to get my token to get my free school meal. And I believe in universalism where possible. And we've heard during the course of this evening, people talking about who've rung in, who've emailed in, who've spoken about the consequences of cost of living. We've heard about families just about managing, going without essentials. And I had an opportunity with financial prudent budgeting, use some of our reserves to support families during the cost of living crisis for the first time in the history of our great city. And we, in just the first term, provided 17 million free school meals. Yes, we saved those families money, about £1,000 over the course of 2 years, but we spoke to teachers. The kids were more attentive, they're more productive. The relationship between the teachers and the parents improved, and all around it's been a huge success. And that's why this year I've extended it for another year, until at least the summer of 2025. And I am disappointed that the Conservatives voted against it last year and this year. And so that's £275 million we're investing in children and our future. But Philip, what we've done is taken away the stigma of means tested. So these kids eat with their mates around a table, they learn social skills, they have fun, it's nutritious, it's addressing issues of public health inequalities, issues of obesity and overweightness, issues of those soft skills that are really important at primary school. And I'm really proud. And those who supported me, and I say this to not just the Labour colleagues here, but the Greens and the Lib Dems, thank you as well. This is a good example of us working together for the benefit of our city. And this will be on the ballot paper on May the 2nd. So, Philip, you'll lend me your support on May the 2nd.
Thank you. I've seen Assemblymember McCartney.
Yes, I just want to say just how important and impactful this scheme has been. I mean, I've been with the Mayor to visit primary schools across London, and teachers and parents do talk about the impact this has. Hungry children cannot learn. And so the Mayor's talked about increasing levels of attainment and concentration and behaviour in schools, but also what teachers tell us is that attendance is improving because many families, particularly during this cost of living crisis, were running up school debt because of their free school meals. And they are now arriving on time because teachers are not chasing them when they arrive at the school gates for that money that they owe. We also know from polling we do that parents, about a third of parents are actually buying less food and essentials than they used to. And they are unable often to heat their homes or to provide that nutritious meal at school, at home. And so the lunchtime meal is really important to them and their families. But it's not just that. I mean, we do know also that hunger doesn't stop when school stops. It goes on into the holidays as well. And so the Mayor has also developed a wraparound programme for those families during school holidays as well. And I was very pleased to go and visit some of those schemes where families are being fed and children are being fed during the holidays. I just think it's an indictment of the last 14 years of austerity that we're in this position where we're a city where many Londoners are reliant on food banks, on being fed at school and in the holidays. I think shame on this Conservative government for letting us get into this state.
Thank you, Assemblymember McCartney. Next, Assemblymember Polanski. And Assemblymember, I want to bring in one last question after this, so if you can be as brief as possible, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'll be very, very brief. Like my colleagues, I've also visited lots of primary schools and met parents and teachers and heard the difference that this free schools meals programme has made, and I'd like to thank the Mayor. And he's right, the Greens have worked with the Mayor on this, and we've encouraged this because it just seems obvious that when we've had 14 years of austerity and children don't have food in their bellies, that's an absolutely urgent thing that needs to happen. I want to encourage the Mayor, though, and I have been doing, to think even bigger on this concept of universality. So it's not just about food, but actually no child and no person should have to live in poverty. And there's a simple idea called a universal basic income. It's not a new idea. In fact, Martin Luther King said it could literally eradicate poverty. And in the Wales government, in the Senedd, Labour, led by Mark Drakeford, have introduced a universal basic income there. In London, there's a small group of citizens in a community in East Finchley who have put together a pilot for a universal basic income, and they've been asking for the Mayor's support. I'm really pleased that every time I brought this to the Mayor, he'll say that he'll meet with them and he'll talk, or his team will meet with them and talk to them about it, but I'd really like to see action. I think making a pilot on universal basic income could mean that we start to roll this around London, so we're not just getting food in children's bellies, but actually we're making sure everyone has that security net to make sure that they don't have to live with poverty. We can end poverty altogether.
Thank you, Assemblymember Polanski. And this is going to be the last question for tonight, which was received by the People's Question Time accessible phone line. And this is from Gary Jones. And Gary asks, do you think the definition of Islamophobia proposed by the all-party parliamentary group on British Muslims should be widely adopted to help combat Islamophobia in our city and keep everyone safe? Mr. Mayor, and a brief answer would be appreciated.
So in 2016, the IHRA made a definition of anti-Semitism. Some people didn't like it, but the Jewish community did, so I adopted it. The all-party parliamentary group have come up with a definition of Islamophobia. Some people, brackets conservatives, close brackets, don't like it, but I've adopted it. And I think just like we call out anti-Semitism, we should call out Islamophobia. This is not protecting the religion. The religion needs no protection. It's protecting the followers of this religion who do require protection. Just like anti-Semitism is not protecting the Torah, it's about protecting the followers of Judaism. Just like we call out misogyny, just like we call out we call out homophobia, we call out anti-Semitism, we should call out Islamophobia, anti-Muslim hatred, and racism. And that's what Leah Anderson said last Friday. Nobody in the Conservative Party, Rishi Sunak, Oliver Dowden, the Cabinet, Susan Hall, has the courage or the values to call it what it is: Islamophobic, anti-Muslim hatred that is also racist.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I don't see any Assembly members indicating for this particular question. So I think then that about concludes it. That's pretty much all the time we have tonight. And I'd like to thank every single one of the people who joined from online from home, who sent in questions. Thank you all very much indeed for participating. Please don't forget to keep an eye on our website for details of the next People's Question Time. You can also keep up to date with the work of the London Assembly on any of our social media accounts. We'd love to hear what you thought of tonight's event. Please do complete the feedback form, which will also explain how you can submit any unanswered questions in writing. So good night, and thank you again for joining us.